Hello, welcome to our presentation today. Today's chapter will be talking about the world of ethics and corruptions. Let's take a look at the content that we'll be explaining today. We will explain about the basics of corruption, origins of corruptions, the drawback of corruptions, and type of corrupt practices. Introductions. Nowadays, the words of corruptions are no longer strange and sound ridiculous to the public, whether it is among the subordinates or the upper class and famous people. This is because there are several issues that appear related to corruptions involving the political, society, or organizations. For instance, in our country Malaysia, there are issues with the 1MDB fund. Meanwhile, at the international level, there are issues of corruptions in FIFA football. So this shows that corruption issues exist for their own benefits. However, before we go deep dive with the world of ethics and corruptions, let's meet our members.
I am Iman Aina Wahida binti Hazrul Harman.
Hello, my name is Nur Sofia Kamaruddin.
Hi everyone, my name is Nura Aifa Zulbila binti Khalid.
Now, let's go back to the corruption.
Have you ever wondered what is corruption? Let me tell you, corruption is an exchange between two partners that influence the allocation of resources, and corruption also is the misuse of public or collective responsibility for private ends. For example, in Finland, the corruption occurs in form of bribery, favoritism, dual roles, and partial criteria. This is because corruption can involve anyone and happen at anywhere, whether they are from the business sector, government, political, health and education sector, sports or the media. So, the transfer of a policymaker to business life has weakens the trust based on the real cases. Therefore, we can see it in the corrupt practice of international business, since there are smuggling, money laundering, piracy, bribery, manipulating, falsification, misconduct and misrepresentation. For instance, in the case of Walmart, Mexico in September 2005, where there were bribes issues that led to the company's stock value dropping as much as $4.5 billion, and a total of over $24 billion of bribes are used to pay the facilitated construction of Walmart store. Thus, that's all a little bit clarification about the corruption. Alright guys, now let's take a look on the origins of corruption, or also can be called as history of corruption. Corruption has been around since the Egyptian dynasty, and it still existed until now in almost the worldwide country. This is because the global economy has grown widely, expanded and thrived. However, the number of issues and level of corruption still keeps increasing from day to day. So we can say that the history of corruption is related to the beginning of the creation of the nation, even though it already gives a negative impact on the public and political system. Generally speaking, corruption occurs due to a variety of circumstances and factors such as low salary and education level, nation's legal systems and weak enforcement, political and economic environment. Professional ethics and legislation includes the habits, customs, traditions and demography. Firstly, as for low salary and education level, it happens when an individual receives a low salary and lacks of knowledge, including a low level of education in ethics. So, he or she may be more likely to commit corruption. This is due to the fact that the main reasons that usually ensure them being voluntarily or forced into corruption are their living needs and responsibilities to meet the cost of surviving. As a consequence, they felt tempted and kept pushing themselves to tolerate and accept corruption. Because of that, some people are driven to commit corruption in order to gain greater financial benefits for their own profit and use. Secondly, as for national legal systems and weak enforcement, it is a legal system of a government procedure and mechanism for drafting, interpreting, and enforcing laws. Despite this, governments and nations continue to have a difficult time enforcing and implementing regulations boldly. This is because the government rules and ethical norms have been poorly developed, either it is in domestic country or international country. Thirdly, the political and economic environment is also one of the reasons and factors that lead to the corruption, because when there is a higher number of economic activities being regulated in the country, the tendency for people who have power to give and take corruption will be higher. Nevertheless, a situation of weak economic development also can cause the corruption issue to occur. Fourthly, in terms of professional ethics and legislation, it is usually the result of lack of professional ethics and laws governing the criminal offence of corruption. This is because professional ethics and legislation are basically referred and related to a set of values that contribute towards the development of professional activities. Therefore, many countries have diverse rules and regulation concerning corruption and its standard. Last but not least, the factors of corruption are habits, customs, traditions, and demography. For example, in Europe, there are two types of stakes and acceptances, and we can see it through the north to the south of Europe, where they accept corruption and believe it as a normal phenomenon. Meanwhile, in the country with a democratic background and past, they assume it as part of traditional stories. This is due to the differences on how different people, areas, and countries view and accept the corruption. However, when it comes to customs in terms of corruption, there are differences between areas and countries. This is because a group of undeveloped countries regard corruption as an informal form of social security, while the countries with a strong broader influence on a family like Italy, Bosnia, Greece, and Albania will provide social security as long as their citizens are loyal and take care of community in order to repay them. Then, in the countries where the main religions are Islam and Orthodoxy, corruption as a tradition is much better than in other religions. The reason for this is because the dominant religions can influence the affect the country's traditions and beliefs. Because of that, the corruption issues in those religions can be managed wisely and carefully, such as Catholicism, Protestantism, Orthodoxy, and Islam can be observed here. Thus, corruption also can happen due to the demography of regions and countries, since the amount of corruption is higher in patriarchal societies, where men dominate the social system more than women. A study of 150 countries in Europe, Africa, and Asia found that women are less affected by corruption. As example, in Peru, they decided to include more women in police units in order to reduce the number of corruption cases because the gender equality, since most of the corruption issues and cases are happen because of men and any other reasons and factors. I think that's all from me, and I will pass it to the next presenter, Sophia, for the more elaboration regarding the corruption.
The drawback of corruptions. Despite direct causality may be difficult to demonstrate, corruption has several economic, political, and societal repercussions. Countries with higher amount of corruption are unable to operate properly or succeed economically, inflicting societal hardships. However, when compared to wealthy countries, developing market economy have substantially greater level of corruptions. Corporations that have created illegal ties with government offices unfairly compete with small enterprises, and resources are not distributed effectively in a corrupt economy. As a result of countries' population having a poorer level of living generally, the quality of healthcare and education lag while fall in a corrupt economy. Let's take a look at the negative impact of corruptions. There is widespread agreement in the literature that corruption has a negative impact on economic growth. The equitable distribution of resources among the populations is also impacted by corruptions, which raises income disparities, undermines the efficiency of social welfare programs, and ultimately leads to lower level of human development. In turn, this can jeopardize equity, economic progress, and long-term sustainable development. There are many negative impacts that can be found in corruption rather than positive impacts, such as corruption has a harmful effect on growth and business operations. The quantity, quality, cost, and profitability are all impacted by corruption. Corruption weakens a country's tax structure and ability to collect incomes. Corruption is expensive for businesses. Corruption has a detrimental impact on company growth, productivity, investment pattern, and efficiency. Corruption has an impact on wealth distribution and human development. Let's dive in on each point. Corruption has a harmful effect on growth and business operations. Many research have been conducted to determine if corruption has a negative impact on economic growth or whether it may have a favorable impact. Some studies continue to make the case that corruption may be economically justifiable since it offers possibilities to get around effective rules. According to other researchers, the negative effect of corruption on development and growth may vary depending on the political system in place. Corruption could help to cut the price caused by burdensome administrative procedure in certain circumstances in the short terms, but it has a long-term negative impact, weakening the efficiency and legitimacy of state institutions. The quantity, quality, cost, and profitability are all impacted by corruption. Corruption reduces the profitability of investment projects by discouraging investment and acting as an additional cost of doing business. Corruption is known to impact the composition of government spending and to skew the decision-making process for public investment. Public authorities may decide to allocate resources less in consideration of the welfare of the general public and more in considering the potential for extortions, as in the case of major infrastructure or defense projects. Corruption also seems to have an impact on the demographic of nations from where FDI originates. Corruption weakens a country's tax structure and ability to collect income. The public sector corruption has a significant negative impact on corporate tax payments. Corruption not only decreases the tax to GDP ratio but also damages the economy over the long term by expanding the underground economy and corrupting the tax code. Cutting public sector corruption could have a significant impact on a country's ability to collect tax revenue. Corruption is expensive for businesses. Fighting corruption makes good financial sense. Corruption increases expenses, uncertainties, reputational concern, and extortion vulnerabilities at the corporate level. It lowers a company's value, raises the cost of accessing capital, erodes healthy competitions. Additionally, due to the risk of corruption, businesses lost a lot of commercial prospects. Corruption has a detrimental impact on company growth, productivity, investment pattern, and efficiency. The growth of a company is probably going to be harmed by corruption. A research that makes use of data on bribe payment made by Uganda businesses discovered that bribes are inversely connected with business growth, and that bribing has a far worse effect on growth than taxation. According to a cross-regional research from 2008, the most significant factor influencing investment in transition countries is corruption. Business size, business ownerships, trade orientations, industry, GDP growth, and openness to trade are some of the factors considered in the regulations. Last but not least, corruption has an impact on wealth distribution and human development. The Gini coefficients, which measure income disparity, show a positive correlation between corruption and this factor. Corruption has an influence on economic growth in terms of distribution as well as economic efficiency. This can be explained by the fact that those with stronger connection, who are often members of higher income groups, are likely to gain from corruption. This government ability to ensure equal resource allocations is undermined by likelihood that better connection individuals would receive the most lucrative government project.
Finally, let's talk about the types of corrupt practices. Corruption is more than bribery. It can include smuggling, fraud, money laundering, counterfeits, and other activities that constitute criminal offenses in most jurisdictions. This section will explain a few corrupt practices that can easily be found in many countries around the world. Bribery. Bribery is a crime that implies a sum of money or gift offered to another person to alter the behavior of a person in ways not consistent with the duties of that person. In nature, a bribe can be in terms of cash payment or non-cash benefits, such as property, privilege, or any promise that can influence one's action or vote. There are many types of bribery. Institutional bribery, where refers to the situation where the individual who pays or receives the bribe get full approval from the organization. Personal bribery is when it does not get any approval, and they are also supply and demand side bribery, which refers to the individuals or organization that are responsible for offering and demanding bribes, respectively. Examples of bribery are a bidder bribing project owners to favor them over other bidders, and a driver may bribe a police officer to not issue speeding tickets. Based on a survey conducted on 17,000 global citizens from 78 countries, shows that Iraq had been perceived as the most corrupted country in the world. Smuggling. Smuggling is a process of illegal transport of products, in particular across a border, including humans. Items that are commonly involved in this action are tobacco, drugs, humans, and many more. For example, in England, they used to smuggle tea, spirits, and silk, while coffee is famous in European countries. However, tobacco can be found everywhere, and these items had a prohibition on importation or exportation. In 1840s, the Opium War happened when Chinese government giving attempt to stop the smuggling of opium. This is seriously taken care of government, where there are laws that regulate smuggling action. In China, they have a Custom Anti-Smuggling Act, Anti-Trafficking in Person and Anti-Smuggling of Migrant 2007 in Malaysia, and Republic Act number 10845 in Philippines. Money laundering. Money laundering is a process of cleaning money with regard to appearance in law that is the practice of engaging in a specific financial transaction in order to conceal the identity, resource, and destination of the money. It can be a relatively simple process or a highly sophisticated one that exploits the international financial system. Reasons why money laundering occurs are to avoid being connected with crime that give rise to the criminal proceeds and able to use proceeds as if they were of legal origin. One of the ways to detect and prevent these actions are taken by most financial companies is having anti-money laundering AML policies. Three processes typically involved in money laundering are placement, layering, and integration. A cash-based business owned by a criminal organization is one of the most common techniques used. For example, if the organization owns a restaurant, it will inflate the daily cash receipt to funnel illegal cash through the restaurant bank account and withdraw the money when needed. Therefore, money laundering can be understood as using another cash source to cover the illegal fund of individuals or organizations. Copyright infringement. Piracy or copyright infringement is the unauthorized use of material governed by intellectual property or copyright law where it does violate one of the owner's exclusive rights. Some of the material that involved in this action are computer programs, book, music, and film. With the existence of the internet, piracy is easier to be done, and the material can be found everywhere on the internet, such as new movie and famous book like Harry Potter. An interesting fact about piracy is it already happened in ancient time, whereby it refers to the crime committed by pirates when they do any violence or depredation on the high seas. United States Constitution is the first that originates the power to criminalize piracy, followed by the first federal law in 1970, and it was revived over the next 60 years. Then, in the late 20th century, the term piracy enlarged its definition, which also includes the copyright violation of intellectual property. Lastly, counterfeit. Counterfeit can be defined as an imitation of a product with the intention to deceptively represent its content of origin, or a crime that involves the use of others' trademarks such as a word, phrase, and symbols. The term is usually used to describe documents, but also to describe clothing, software, pharmaceutical, and watches. It is a serious crime as it provides the individual who makes or sells counterfeit profit unfairly using others' trademark owner's reputation. In the United States, counterfeit offenses can be punished by life in prison and fined up to $30 million. Normally, customers go to counterfeit products because they cannot afford the price of original product. Plus, in this globalization era, people can find it everywhere on the internet. Examples of brands that commonly counterfeit are Gucci and Rolex. China is also known as one of the largest exporters of commodities, including counterfeit goods, with the estimation of 70% of counterfeit goods produced. However, in these recent years, the Chinese government started to implement several measures for tightening the supervision of the circulation of counterfeit goods in e-commerce. The areas that they focus to improve are transparency of the seller's identity, the ability to access more details of trade information, and supervision on live streaming sale subject.
For the conclusion, corruption is the exploitation or abuse of public or communal responsibility for personal gain. The corrupt practice involves acquiring a resource for their own profit and usage without knowledge or ignore the consequences that might hit them in the long run. Corruption is harmful for businesses, politics, the economy, and society. Corruption may cause long-term damage. That is all from us. Thank you.